Back then, I thought the internet was the only revolution I would ever have to protect against in my lifetime. I was wrong. Companies who ignore the threats and opportunities of artificial intelligence will share the same fate as companies who ignored the internet.
Hello, and thank you for joining our webinar, AI, What Now? I'm Christine Bejarasco, your host, and whenever I'm not hosting webinars, I also moonlight as a CISO at WithSecure. And together with me here is Paolo Palumbo, our current head of labs, who is a dinosaur like myself with 2 decades of experience in this industry, started during the time of rootkits. And also this afternoon we have Mikko. We have the honor of having Mikko, who has been around since the time of file infectors that were traveling via floppy disks. We are dinosaurs, but hopefully today you're going to have fun as well, discussing stuff with us. And all of us have also been part of the labs, analyzing malware, and also have led the labs. Interesting times. And speaking of the labs, Paolo started his career in 2005 as our first artificial intelligence hire. And interestingly enough, sorry about that, this is the next one. Interestingly enough, this was where we released our first AI. Do you remember this, Paolo? Mikko?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely, definitely. It feels rather interesting to think back of what happened 20 years ago,
Yes.
when I joined WithSecure. And at that time, we really didn't think of too much about artificial intelligence. It was about mathematics, statistics, and how to really protect customers in a way that didn't involve really involving humans all the time, right? So we started thinking of how we could leverage these techniques to protect our customers better. And we called them probabilistic engine, heuristic engine. And in effect, it was essentially artificial intelligence applied to cybersecurity in its earlier stages. So it was really exciting. And
But that was 18 years ago. I mean, how different is AI already today?
And also we have to note that the company has changed names or did a spin-off since those days.
Yes.
In fact, the company changed its name to F-Secure 24 years ago, and that was 18 years ago. So it was fairly new brand at the time.
Fairly fresh. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And we are now WithSecure, so
Yeah.
quite a fresh change as well.
But when you think about the longer time scale in artificial intelligence and machine learning, and now with generative AI, our founder, Risto, who founded the whole company in 1988, before he founded the company, he had already written articles to magazines about programming AI systems. You could find old Finnish language magazines with articles written by Risto around 1987 about using Lisp to program machine learning things. And he's been a big AI promoter for years and years. He was clearly ahead of its time and really put the new gear in place like 5 years ago, just before this current generative AI revolution happened. And of course, we're really proud about the fact that we were using these technologies before any other security company in the world.
Absolutely.
We were an absolute leader in this. Maybe we weren't the best in telling the world what we're actually doing, but I do think that we are a leader in this field and still are today.
Yeah. And today, I mean, after the November 2022 release of ChatGPT, I mean, of course, this has now opened up to the masses, and there has been a mass realization, maybe you can even call it an inflection point of understanding of what is really the capability of AI. So the question really becomes, from then to now, has the hype been justified? Has AI delivered on these promises?
It's a very interesting question. I would say that in many ways, the introduction of ChatGPT brought AI to the face of everybody. Everybody could have access to it. Everybody could play with it, engage with it in a way that was substantially different from what we saw in the past, like the recommendations engine that power Amazon or other vendors that provide you, shopping capabilities. And right now, in many ways, I think that AI has lived up to a certain level of hype. It has enabled many people from achieving things that before they couldn't achieve, do things faster, do things more effectively, and sometimes, depending on the use case, also really help them improve themselves and better themselves in general. Now, is it fully the thing that transformed already society? I would say not. But the influence so far is very positive in my eyes.
But there are obviously downsides as well. And as a CISO, sometimes I think about these unknown unknowns, and every now and then it paralyzes you to make a decision about AI. I mean, are these sort of like legitimate concerns, so to speak? What's your take on that, Mikko?
Yes, the concerns are legitimate. But at this moment, it's quite clear that the upsides are much bigger than the downsides. There's a lot of things we don't know, and this is a different revolution from all the previous technology revolutions we've seen. So the jury is still out. It could turn out to be worse than we believe right now. But at the moment, when you look at the things generative AI is enabling, how it improves our productivity and opens up completely new ways of working, and then you look at the current concrete risks, right now the risks are clearly lower than the benefits, even with all the things we've seen. And we've, of course, seen things like deepfakes and others, but still, the upsides are bigger than the downsides. And it's important to realize that this is just the very beginning of this revolution. When you look at all the previous technology revolutions, it's quite obvious that we tend to overestimate the speed of the revolutions and underestimate the size of the revolution. Good example would be the internet revolution. In 1999, just when we renamed the company to F-Secure, when we went public, in the middle of the dot-com hype bubble, the promises that were given to people about how internet is going to change the world were promises like, one day we will all be doing shopping online, or one day we will all be watching movies online, which of course happened. I mean, that's exactly what we do today.
Yes.
But we weren't doing it in 1999 or 2000 or 2001 or 2 or 3 or 4. It took a little bit longer. But then when it did happen, it was a much, much bigger revolution that anybody could think ahead. I mean, nobody was thinking that eventually we'll all be using tiny supercomputers in our pockets as the primary mechanism of accessing the internet. In 1999, we were sitting on our desks with big CRT displays and a computer. So it's hard to see how big the revolution is going to be. And we are now in 1999 for the AI revolution.
But it's definitely accelerating. I mean, ChatGPT is kind of like a trigger, a catalyst, if you may, to accelerate that as well. And we're curious about what our audience thinks. And that's why we are conducting a poll. And sorry about the audience here on site, because unless you go online, you wouldn't be able to join the poll. But for our audience online, there is a poll question asking you about how often you use AI tools in your work. There are different options, once a day, et cetera. Please select your option. We're going to check the answers to this poll later on. So give you some time to give your answers as well. But a question to Mikko, I mean, how often you use AI tools? Pivoting a little bit to what are the AI tools that you actually use? Because we have been seeing you using different things all over the place. Something you care to share with the audience?
Absolutely, yeah. And I do use them every single day. I use like Claude and GPT quite often to just proofread my even emails. Like, I mean, I write something, and of course English is not my first language, so I write something, and then like, is this okay? Can you just make it nicer? And that's a different process than I would use with a traditional proofreader or a spell checker. It typically makes it concretely nicer, and typically I'm very happy with the outcome, especially from GPT in English. When I search, I quite often use Perplexity because it combines Claude and GPT-4o and traditional search engines and double checks the results. I think I'm getting much more productive search results from there. One tool I was really impressed with last month, I had a video clip of my own talk and I needed subtitles for it. Now, I've done subtitles manually before. You know, you take Notepad, you write timestamps, you write the text. It's not hard to do. And I started doing it manually. And then I was like, this probably could be done with an AI today. First Google hit was Maestra. I uploaded the video clip. It like transcribed the video clip in seconds, and the subtitles were perfect, not a single typo. And it was free. It was free.
Okay.
And I mean, people are making a living making subtitles for videos, and suddenly there's these free tools online which do a great job in that. Then of course use image generators. My favorite one is Photoleap, and I've played around with music generators. And I want to mention something about music generators. In May this year, I tweeted or posted on X a forecast after playing with Suno and Udio generators. And I made the call that during this year we will have a top 40 hit made entirely by an AI. And right now, at this very moment, in the German charts, and also in the Austrian charts, in German charts, in slot 27, is a song called Wer knallt in einen Talahorn, a German language song which has been made with Udio from a single prompt. And AI has composed the song, played the song, arranged the song, written lyrics, and then sang the song. And we have the song here. Let's listen a clip from Wer knallt in einen Talahorn.
Let's play.
Letzte Woche Kirmes war anders wild. Ich hab mit den Chayas am Autoscooter gechillt. Da hab ich einen Talahorn aus der Ferne erkannt. Mit Seiten auf Null und Vape in der Hand. Er hat ne dicke Schale und wirkt richtig hart. Aber er fragt jeden Kerl, ob er Probleme hat.
It's one of those melodies that sticks in here.
Now, if you would hear this song from the radio, would you think that this is made by an AI?
No, absolutely not.
Probably not.
No.
Yeah. And it is charting right now. The world is changing pretty fast.
Quite. And we could even play that without worrying about copyright.
Yeah, royalties are an interesting question. Like, where should royalties go for a song made from a single prompt by an AI? Should it go to the AI algorithm, to the guy who wrote the prompt, or maybe to the original artists whose music was used as the learning material for the generative AI algorithm? And we don't seem to have the answer.
Not yet.
Yes.
Yes. We go back to our poll. Thank you for sharing that, Mikko. Let's see. I think we already have some answers. All right. So same as what Mikko said. Most of our audience is using AI at least once a day.
Yeah.
Probably if we even have an option for more than once a day, that might even win.
Yeah.
It's not surprising. It reflects the value, the perceived value of these technologies that we all feel it brings.
Yeah.
So people use it to achieve whatever they want to do. We don't know what it is that our audience wants to do with it, but they feel that AI helps them to do it better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are these the figures you two were expecting? I think they're higher than I was expecting.
This is what I was expecting, that at least once a day is going to be winning.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about it. I'm actually...
But massively.
I mean, of course, we have a selective audience here that's answering the poll, but that's a pretty impressive figure.
And how many people will have answered the poll? Is there anybody from the crew who knows? 160. So out of 160 people, 42%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Impressive.
It's not quite. It's pretty good. But all right, with this in mind, I mean, businesses obviously are also in a gold rush to capitalize on how can they maximize the benefits of AI in their organization. But we have also noticed that when they jump in without thinking a little bit about their use cases, it feels like they are not able to maximize how they can utilize this in their organization with the different types of use cases that they may have across different functions. So are there any tips, for instance, Paolo, on how should businesses approach this?
I think in general, the main tip is businesses should not be afraid of this technology. Exactly as our audience shows in the poll, there should be a curious, positive approach in taking into use these technologies, but these should be implemented in a careful way. The point is that this technology is, for as much as it feels like that it has been with us for always, it's just a year and a half or 2 years that it is around. And it has been essentially unleashed upon the organization, this kind of technology. So we need to use it positively, introduce it, but with a purpose. Not just say, okay, well, go there and do your work better with artificial intelligence.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because, like, for me at least, there's definitely, you can feel the pressure that all across the organization, people are feeling like, now, how do I use AI for this and how do I use AI for that? As if thinking about AI first before use case first. Do you think there's something amiss with that approach?
Absolutely. We have been told that AI is the great enhancer of productivity, something that multiplies your strength. And to a degree, it is true, but it's a tool that needs to be applied to a purpose. And to me, this is the main advice for organizations. They need to have a clear purpose of what they want to do with artificial intelligence, and then think of what is the best way to achieve that purpose or integrate AI into the workflow that they need to improve, right?
I'm curious about examples because, Mikko, you're experimenting a lot with different AI tools. And of course, you're using it for the use cases that you have. Could you, for example, show us the process through which you approach it? I mean, thinking about your use cases, how do you look for tools to give organizations some tips to do this?
As always, it is a leadership issue. Nothing happens unless it's part of the company's mission and strategy, and the top management has to be taking this seriously. They have to lead organization through a change. They have to enable, they have to give access to the tools. There has to be a policy which tells you how you can use these tools, and then you have to encourage. And many organizations I've spoken with over the last year feel like that they're late. Like, you know, we should already be doing more, and the revolution is underway, and we're not as much part of it as we should be. And I'd like to comfort the organizations that feel they're late. You're not late. This revolution is just starting. There's plenty of time to get aboard. Again, we can compare to the previous revolution, the internet. I mean, we set up the first website for our company in 1994. By 1996 or 7 or 8, companies might think that we're really late. We don't have a website or whatever. The real game changer for companies was online commerce. Like that you could actually sell something online. You could sell your services online. And that became the norm only in the early 2000s. So there was plenty of time to get on board. The same thing will happen here. Although I do believe that AI revolution is moving faster than any previous technology revolution. But the way I find technologies and tools is simply by following a lot of the discussion, writings, and thinkers in this space. Social media has been very good for me in finding new tools and new projects, just being very active in following the people who create these tools. I have good contacts, for example, with people who work at OpenAI, many of which I've actually left over the last 6, 7, 8 months and started new companies.
Yes.
Very interesting project.
Yes.
And simply by following these people and looking what they post and share gives me ideas, and I investigate and find new tools.
Let's speak on that thread later in the like thinking about the future and where this is heading towards, because that's actually quite interesting. Speaking of businesses, and it's interesting, you mentioned a little bit about the subtitles and how people do it for a living, and businesses as well. I mean, there are different types of jobs, different types of work that we're doing now, where people are fearing that AI could really disrupt their work. And there's nothing new with this. I mean, this has happened with different types of disruptive technologies that we have in the past. Now, is there a difference to this revolution with the type of disruption that we might see in the workforce?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Every technological revolution before has changed the way we do our work, and they have destroyed or changed the workspace. maybe the best example is Industrial Revolution or the innovation of engines. Steam engine, electrical engine, things like that. They destroyed a lot of jobs. People who were using their muscles to move things around were not needed as much as they were before because we now had engines to do it for us.
Yes.
However, this is the first technological revolution which destroys white-collar jobs and does nothing to blue-collar jobs, with a couple of exceptions. You could say taxi driver is a blue-collar job. That might be a job which will be destroyed by AI. But let's say plumbers. Plumbers will be fine. We will need plumbers for years and years. AI is not going to... I mean, if your son asks you, what should I study to make sure AI is not going to take my job, become a plumber. Like plumbers will be in dear need in the future. Don't become a lawyer. Lawyers won't be needed. AI will take that job, and that's a white-collar job. And this has never been the case before. This is a revolution which is destroying or has the potential to destroy white-collar jobs much more than blue-collar jobs.
I want to share a comment. Maybe I don't see it as dramatically as Mikko. I think what is going to happen, in my eyes, is a transition that rather than going from lawyers to no lawyers, it will go from lawyers that work on their own to lawyers that work with the help of AI and therefore are massively more effective. So at least for the time being, I think lawyers can sleep a bit more.
But I think
safely.
AI still cannot take the bar. So
Why do you say that?
not yet.
Oh.
In the future, we never know.
In the very near future. Let me give a tangent to what Paolo is saying. Let's say I get sick. I have something with me. I need to go to the doctor. Clearly, I would prefer a human doctor over some kind of AI expert system. But in fact, I would prefer to go to a human doctor with an AI assistant. And what I mean by this is that, training doctors takes a decade. You have to read a lot of material to become
Absolutely.
a medical doctor.
Yes. Yeah.
But you can't read everything and you can't remember everything. And I'd really prefer to go to a doctor which is a human, has the human touch, understands my problems, but then consults an expert system which has read and remembers every medical book in history, every medical research, every journal, everything released yesterday in Germany or in Japan. A human can never do that. The combination of a human expert with an expert system which has all the knowledge probably would be the ideal solution.
It would be a more powerful solution as well.
Not only that, it would be more effective. It would expedite handling of cases that are trivial.
Yeah.
So this has a profound impact on the ability to serve more customers or go through the queue at the doctors much faster and get help, deeper help to those who need it faster.
Yes. And we have questions, actually, some questions coming in from our online audience. And by the way, just a reminder, for our online audience as well as our audience here on site, we can take in questions. Please send those in anytime. And later on, if we don't have enough time, we can handle it later on in the program. So please feel free to send it in. Speaking of questions, there has been a question that was sent in asking, will AI be bigger than the internet?
Yes, AI will be the biggest technology revolution until it's going to be superseded by something even bigger. But definitely, of course, these are technologies which are building on top of existing technologies. The internet turned all knowledge into data. Like we have, before internet, everything was on paper.
Yes.
After internet, everything is bits. We can't use paper to teach machines. We can use bits to teach machines. So we needed the previous revolution for generative AI revolution to happen. And of course, computers don't work without electricity. We needed the electricity revolution for computers to become a thing. But
it builds on top of.
So every one of these revolutions builds on top of the previous one. But AI is a huge revolution, and I would consider it to be a bigger revolution than the internet.
Okay. And I'm smiling because there's one question that's interesting here, which is a thread from the disruption of lawyers. Can AI replace, so this is from Ross Evans, can AI replace some of our politicians?
I hope so. I'm guessing Mr. Evans is a lawyer.
Probably through professions.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, but let me just add on to that one. Just a general note, which I preface by saying that I'm not political at all, and I have no interest in becoming a political figure of any kind. But I do miss engineers from decision makers in almost any country. When I meet politicians or members of parliament or ministers, almost none of them have technical background or have programming background or have engineering degree. We're right now in Helsinki, a pretty high-tech hub. I mean, pretty nerdy country.
What?
You look at our members of our parliament, there's like 4 engineers out of 250. So I really hope there would be more technical people taking leadership positions in politics as well, because it's important. And I'll repeat, I'm not going into politics myself. I just hope someone else would. Paolo, would you be interested?
Not today, but thank you for asking.
All right, from politics, going back to the real.
That's a good question. It actually shows a bit the how, I think Mikko said it very nicely, how big this transformation is.
Yeah.
And it really affects everybody. Everybody feels touched by it in a way that even the internet didn't do for a very long time. So what we're seeing in the question, it kind of reveals the same feel.
Quite, definitely. I completely agree. And cybersecurity, obviously, is quite heavily touched by it as well. And for us practitioners, I mean, many of our audiences as well who are working in cybersecurity practice, there is never enough resources to do everything. I mean, I have met a CISO of an organization where him alone in his organization is like 1,800 for them, just doing security in the organization, and there's never enough resources. So the question now is, how can AI help us, Paolo?
Well, from a fundamental perspective, exactly as it helps everybody else. And what do I mean? I mean, the world of a cybersecurity expert is a world of running around with their head on fire, fighting cyber criminals.
Yes.
Did you say hair on fire?
Yeah.
Yes, you can see what happened to mine, yes. But point is, the amounts of cases that the traditional security expert has to handle are incredible. They grow with every day because attackers become sophisticated. They try to exploit every vulnerability, every weakness. We all know this stuff.
Yeah.
And having the ability of leveraging a technology like the one that we are discussing today implies the security expert can also move faster, validate and triage items more effectively, and respond to threats better, as a matter of fact. Now, I have to be careful because, of course, we know about all the many challenges that come with this kind of technologies. We have been exposed to topics such as hallucination and the validity of what these systems provide us, right? So we, in cybersecurity, when we need to carefully choose what we prioritize from a risk perspective, it's important to leverage tools that do not just lead us in the wrong direction, so that they do the right job of pointing us to the cases that really need the attention of the human experts, rather than leading us to some convoluted path that leads to nothing.
So helps prioritize the items that we need to see first, essentially. I mean,
Correct.
We can't solve all cybersecurity problems, unfortunately. I mean, we do need to prioritize, and it never reaches zero.
Yes. From this perspective, then we need to, for example, when we design our own system, the Luminen assistant that we have in our products, we really were very careful of exactly focusing on enhancing the quality of life of the cybersecurity expert responding to threats. If somebody comes in, is already swamped by cases pouring in from all sides, and then we would have given them a tool that...
I need to do prompt engineering.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been not an improvement in their situation, but just a worsening of their situation. That's something we decided not to do. So we caged, if you will, the AI and made sure that we prepare the prompts in a way that are suitable, validated, and the user can only benefit from it. It's not trivial to do this kind of things.
And I mentioned we cage the owl because Luminen is the owl logo that we have. Interestingly enough, I mean, obviously there's a lot of boon for cybersecurity for society, for different types of businesses. But then the threat landscape probably has also changed. And I guess this is a concern as well of different people who have roles like myself. So AI being a neutral technology like the internet, it's neutral. But it opens up the door for new threats as well to evolve because threats follow the evolution of technology. But I'm curious if, do you think there are advantages that the bad guys have versus the good guys? I mean, if we can start with you, Mikko, and then Paolo later on.
The advantage attackers always have, regardless of the platform, regardless of the technology, is that they can look at the existing defense systems in advance. They can just go and download or buy security products and test their attacks against them and change their attacks, try them over and over again, try to find ways around it. We can try to make this smaller by having cloud-enabled detection. So, you know, we see them testing our systems, which makes it easier for us to adjust. But the basic premise is there. And all kind of testing or brute forcing or finding vulnerabilities can be turbocharged with automation, including with AI-enabled automation. So that's a benefit they get. There's many different things from the threat point of view that generative AI enables, and they're quite different. I mean, if you look at the biggest problem for consumers, which is scams, that's definitely already happening. Scams are being run with AI automation systems. The attackers are crossing language barriers completely. With
better translation as well.
I mean, it's so easy to write a scam, romance scam, auction scam, Airbnb scam, and just localize it to 100 different languages and keep the discussion going. You don't need to speak any of the languages. When we look at problems affecting companies and enterprises, it's a little bit different. We've seen examples of these being used against companies, for example, in BEC scams or CEO scams. But the attacks haven't been as big as, the amount of attacks hasn't been as big as we were expecting. It's starting a bit slower than you would think. The technology exists, for example, to do real-time deepfake Teams calls using the stolen face of a CEO. We haven't seen a single case. We've seen stolen voices or heard stolen voices. That's been done. And there's no reason why it wouldn't be happening already. The technology is there. The barriers for entry are really low. But maybe it's all a bit academic. It doesn't really matter if it's happening today because it's going to happen tomorrow anyway. I mean, we're very close to all of this. It's one aspect that's going to change very quickly.
Could it be, Mikko, like the same speed as you mentioned that we underestimate the speed of adoption as well?
You're right. It's exactly the same thing. So we think it's going to be a faster revolution. It's going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to be a bigger revolution. Also in the threats. You could say the same thing about malware, which would use Gen AI to change its code or rewrite its code, because we've seen a handful of examples.
A bunch of polymorphic ones.
Yeah, we used to call this polymorphic, but that wasn't using Gen AI to rewrite its code. Now we have examples of that, but only a handful. It hasn't become a big problem. The same thing you could be saying about full automation of malware campaigns, which seems like an obvious. If I would be a malware writer, if I would be the head of a cybercrime gang, that's what I would be doing. I would be automating the full process, basically getting rid of my foot soldiers and having it automated for the main purpose of being much faster in reacting to defenders. It takes them surprisingly long to change their operations when we block some part of their operation. They could change in a second if they would just automate this. And I'm a bit surprised they haven't done it already.
They might just after the webinar.
Yeah. Don't watch this if you're a cyber criminal. Yeah. But the thing I just want to mention, I think we're going to speak a little bit more about deepfakes, but that's the one part which we do see. But even those are typically either political uses or consumer scams. That's pretty much what we've seen with deepfake so far.
All right. Paolo, any additional advantages for threat actors?
I think that I agree with what Mikko said. In addition to it, I would point out that the technology being generic implies that the threat actors are trying to come to terms with it as well. So my expectation is that while we are not seeing direct utilization in attacks, what we might be not seeing is threat actors leveraging it in an indirect way. For example, the same tooling that allows developers to be more effective and write code faster becomes available to these individuals as well, so they can write the malware faster. It doesn't mean the malware includes any generative AI, as Mikko was saying, but the ability to deliver code faster is something that is probably happening behind the scenes. Similarly, the same ability of these technologies to enable people to execute tasks they wouldn't have been able to do earlier means that threat actors are now facilitated in designing or even executing campaigns, even if the AI is not part of the execution of the campaigns.
Yes.
Finally, I think the advantage of the threat actors essentially lies in the fact that they don't have the same ethics that other people have. For example, we as defenders and developers and people that abide to law, we tend to be limited to models that are constructed with rules and prevent us from giving us
That's absolutely true.
dangerous information. If I go to the ChatGPT and ask it how to make a bomb, ChatGPT will say, you know what, it's time to talk about something else. And that's perfectly fine. But somebody who has no ethics, such a cybercriminal, will perhaps not use the same ChatGPT that I use. So they are not bound by the same rule set that we have to abide to. To me, this is a drastic advantage that cyber criminals have. And it is, of course, in the sense of them carrying out their malicious initiatives. But they do not play by the same rules. They never have. And Mikko knows this very well, for example.
Yeah.
But the criminals can only bypass the guardrails and the safety and security restrictions of AI models if they have access to the models themselves, to the weightings and to the source code. Paolo, how do you feel about open source large language models?
That's a topic akin to the one of regulations. We could spend a few hours here. In general, I feel that we cannot put the genie back in the bottle. So keeping these things restricted and unavailable to the research community, in the end, will do more harm than good.
I disagree.
That's good.
I think if there are, I'm a big fan of open source.
Yeah.
For the record, I am. But if there are limits to open source, this is where I think they are. Because there's so much work being done by the leading AI companies to build these safety and security restrictions, which are all in vain if and when they release it as source code. You can just remove all of that and do absolutely anything you want. And they are becoming very, very powerful. A very practical example is online porn images, which are always generated with the open source generators. Because the generators refuse to do porn. But if the source code is available, you just remove the restriction and do whatever you want. So if there are limits to open source, this might be where they are.
I don't think you are. I mean, it's reasonable what you say. Perhaps my perspective is that no matter what the restriction we put in place, they cannot be globally applied anywhere. So it is a dangerous battle to play. And if we play it in this way of restricting and putting regulation only on one side of the playing field, we will see differences being created and disparity becoming stronger and stronger. I don't think we can effectively keep certain things out of the hands of the bad guys. If we would do it very effectively, they might play what they do best, which is to hack organizations and steal what they want. So,
since we are already talking about regulations anyway, I'm just curious. Open source has been an area that has never been heavily touched by regulations, unless, of course, there's some clear violation of the law. Do you think that down the road, this openness versus closeness, that regulations could have something to play here?
Could be. It could be. Maybe if we get some drastic enough examples on the problems generated by open source generative AI systems, that politicians might somehow try to restrict that, which sounds really wild, but it's not impossible. The amount of resources, computing power, concrete money that you need to teach a generative AI system is, I think, in my opinion, still out of the reach of cybercrime gangs. They don't have massive data centers filled with NVIDIA H200s like Microsoft does. They can easily use an existing Gen AI model once it's ready, once it's created by someone else. But I don't think they are teaching their own. And they can only modify them if they are available as open source. So denying access to open source would solve a lot of problems, but it would also be really restrictive. Once again, this is a trade-off. Like almost everything in cybersecurity, this is a trade-off. And I'm going to repeat it, that I'm a fan of open source. I went to Helsinki University at the same time when Linus Torvalds was writing the Linux kernel. What do you think? I am a fan of open source, but this is problematic.
And this is where the unknown unknowns sort of come in. And last August, the EU, of course, being a regulatory superpower, has enforced the AI Act. And that's the first of its kind in the world. And different countries are also trying to look into how can they do this. So perhaps this could be a next iteration of that, looking into how this evolves and how could we ensure that this doesn't end up in a very dangerous kind of dual use for both the good and bad guys.
From my opinion, the biggest challenge for regulators, definitely for the AI Act, is scope. Like, what exactly are we trying to regulate? Because when you get into regulating artificial intelligence, people are thinking about entirely different things to regulate. Someone's thinking about that these systems are becoming too intelligent and we should restrict how much power they have, how much wisdom they have. Others are thinking about copyright, like the original source material which is being fed to these systems. How do we regulate the trademarks and copyright of the source material? Someone else is thinking about these malicious uses of these these engines and how they can be used to do harm. Someone is thinking about information operations fueled by large language models. So you really have to first define what exactly you're trying to regulate. What's the scope? And if you look at the AI Act, it's trying to do pretty much everything at the same time. It's
a bit high level.
It's way too high level and doing trying to do different things which are not really all in the same bucket, which probably should be divided to different regulations altogether. It's a big apple. It's a big elephant. You can't eat it in one go.
In one go. Yeah. The interesting thing about this as well is that if AI evolves really fast, can regulation keep up with the speed?
A great example is that the first version of AI Act came out 4 years ago. Just before, GPT-2 came out 3.5 years ago. I was one of the first users of GPT-2, which wasn't a chat-based system yet. It was just completion engine. World really changed. EU was way ahead of the rest of the world. They had an AI Act, the first version already out. And then GPT came out and everything changed. So it's hard to be the leading regulator when the area is changing so quickly.
Very quickly. But moving on a little bit to technology from regulation. So as human beings, I guess we are on a quest for superintelligence here. And Mikko, would you be able to define for us what are these different stages of different types of artificial intelligence that we are talking about?
Sure. So the typical split is split into three: artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and artificial superintelligence. Narrow means everyday tasks that we see already today. When you drive your car to a parking lot, there's an AI system which reads your license plate and knows what it says. That system cannot do anything else. Or Google search. It can only search. It can't write poetry. It's a narrow thing. They are very good, and they are superior to humans in that. I mean, computers are superior to humans in many things. Computers are better in calculating math, right? No disagreement on that. So when you go to narrow things, we have superhuman capabilities with computers. We've had it for a very long time. Artificial narrow intelligence is AI which does one specific thing. General intelligence is that it does all the things, everything that a human can do. As long as you speak about the brain. Like, of course, physical stuff is a different discussion. And then artificial superintelligence is things that are beyond human. And from my point of view, I don't think our level of intelligence is important in any way. Like the IQ, average IQ level of a human, whatever it's 105 IQ or 110 IQ, that's completely arbitrary. Computers, AI systems, when they get close to our level of general intelligence, they will bypass us easily. They won't even notice when they go from AGI to ASI. They go to 200 IQ, 1000 IQ, 1 million IQ. That's going to happen. And if that sounds, the idea that there would be general intelligence which would be as good as a human, all you have to really imagine is brain simulators. Like, this is not the typical way AI systems are built today, but you could imagine a simulator which simulates every neuron and every synapse in a human brain. And if it runs at the same speed as a human brain, then it would be exactly a human. Has exactly the same capability as we all do. And then you overclock it to be twice as fast. Now it's superhuman. Then you overclock it to be 1 billion times faster, and it's going to be, or let's say 10 billion faster, then it would be more intelligent than the humankind combined.
Race,
right. So that's ASI.
I'm guessing that is still far enough in the future.
You think? You hope?
Guessing. I am hoping
Yes.
that this is still far enough in the future.
And the example I gave about brain simulators, that's not really, I mean, we're not even close to simulating a real human brain. So the development right now is in large language models and generative algorithms of other kinds, which is a completely different way of looking at intelligence. But, you know, we are going to that direction, that eventually they're going to be general.
We are in pursuit of superintelligence after all.
I mean, and that's the mission of OpenAI. That's what they're trying to build.
Okay. And Paolo, so grounding this a little bit closer to today, 1 to 2 years, where do you think are we going from here to the use cases that you're seeing in cyber and cyber adjacent?
I think here we need to pick up from what we said earlier, like that ChatGPT came into the picture and stimulated the imagination of people. And what we can expect is an application of generative AI to all the fields that are currently being researched. If we look at the amount of research papers being released or being made available, either at publication date or earlier, the amount that involve some form of generative AI inclusion are massive. It's a massive number. I was recently reading one that had the title of GPT CRISPR. For those who know, CRISPR is the kind of is a genetic toolkit. Toolkit, I think it's a good way of putting it. And it's a good paper. I leave for the audience to check it out if they want.
When you say GPT CRISPR, I mean, it creeps a little bit, because like, are you now trying to supercharge editing my genes, or?
That's one of the things that people are interested in, and
I could use some of that.
Maybe the audience online can give us some ideas of which superpower to give us.
That would be interesting.
Would be cool.
Give your answers.
And the word of cyber is not any different here. We will see application of generative AI to all the fields that are touched by cybersecurity or that are related to cybersecurity, optimization of operations, ability to triage faster cases, integration with toolkits, or finding vulnerabilities. There are already some cases in which there is a DARPA challenge ongoing that leverages artificial intelligence for automatic finding of vulnerabilities and patching them. There is.
Give me a piece of that. I could definitely use that.
We'll have to wait for the results. Yes. the new round is ongoing. But point is, this is why this stuff stimulates really everybody and puts their really has shifted the direction of the research community in a way that LLMs and the generative AI become really a big part of it.
Well, from today then, fast forward to the future of superintelligence, Mikko, are you seeing things there that gives you hope, optimism, not pessimism?
Yeah, I am an optimist. I've spent my life looking at the downsides and risks generated by technology, but I've remained an optimist. Maybe I'm stupid, but I am an optimist, and I do believe this revolution will bring us more upsides than downsides, just like the previous ones. But we can't just get the upsides; we will get the problems as well. The internet was great, brought us all these great benefits, and completely new kinds of crime, new risks, new kinds of war. The problems we will get with this revolution are going to be very real, and it's pretty wild that what we're seeing already. Last week, the richest man in the world posted deepfake images of a candidate for US president on his own social media. Musk was posting doctored images of Kamala Harris on X. Deepfake images of a political candidate, which is pretty, when you say it out loud, it's pretty outrageous, isn't it? But this is really happening. Maybe the upside is that as there are more and more cases like this, we get used to them and we are not affected by them anymore. When Photoshop became a thing in 1990s, it enabled anybody to make perfect modifications to still images. Like before that, you could modify images, but it was hard.
Yeah.
I mean, governments might do like really elaborate. I mean, Soviet Union might remove people from photos with great care, but normal people couldn't do that. Then Photoshop came around, and everybody could do anything. You could add a third hand to an image, and it would look real.
Sixth finger.
Yeah, well, and that changed the way we looked at images because we knew they could be photoshopped. Well, this is the Photoshop moment for moving images. We will change the way we look at video because we know we can't trust video anymore. Now we are in the migration where it's still hard, but it's going to be easier for us to always remember that we can't trust our eyes.
And we are going to get used to living in that world as well.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Paolo and Mikko. So we move to Q&A, and we have quite a few questions come from our online audience. If you have any questions in here as well, please take the mic and ask us questions. There's one question here. I would not spend, says Catherine, money on AI-generated music. So if it proliferates in the future, does this devalue or increase the value of the arts?
I respect Catherine's opinion, and we all have to make the choice, I believe. Its value is in the eye of the beholder in this case, or in the ear of the beholder in this case.
So this is going to be like a concert, no AI allowed. Could be something.
Well, I mean, I think live concerts will be done by humans for the foreseeable future. But I'm guessing more and more of the music composed by, rock bands, they will use AI to help their creative process. I can't come up with a good riff. Let's try Suno. Okay, that's a good riff, and then they play on top of that. Something like that. It's a tool.
All right. There's a ransomware question from Caroline. Will AI end ransomware or explode it?
Can you please repeat the question?
Will AI end ransomware or the ransomware plague or explode it, perhaps even further?
I think the malware campaigns that I mentioned earlier is what I think is going to happen here. Ransomware gangs, they have the resources, they have the money, they can automate big part of their work, which would make ransomware and the spreading tools they use to find victims more efficient, because they could respond much more efficiently and much more faster to what security companies do. That's, I think, what's going to happen.
It's a bit the traditional discussion we have of cybercriminals being essentially business people. They see a tool in their hands, they will apply to whatever dirty use case they have, such as ransomware.
Which leads actually to one question here from Andrew. Should we then be afraid of AI? Hackers and protectors are using it, but then the bad guys are also using it. So can the protectors always win?
This is, I think, what I was saying. We touched on this earlier. Right now, the worst thing that a person can do is to retreat from these technologies completely, isolate themselves and look at them with fear. I think care needs to be applied when using these technologies, when approaching the world as it transitions into using these technologies. But not touching them, not using them, not embracing them is, in my eyes, very risky. There is the concrete risk of being left behind. So we need to look at these technologies for what they are, tools, and use them, not being afraid of them.
You could live your life without using computers or mobile phones, but very few want to.
Yeah.
Same thing will apply here.
It isolates you
Yes.
quite a lot from the rest of society. All right. There is a question, perhaps a little bit related to geopolitics. So many of the countries that we in the West consider adversaries are also heavily invested in AI or have a sound AI ecosystem. So will AI be able to manage adversary simulation effectively? Who wants to take that?
United States is taking this race very seriously. That's why they've been limiting the availability of the cutting-edge chipsets, AI chipsets, especially to mainland China. And this is a bit weird because all of them, every single one of the leading chipsets or GPUs is being built in Taiwan, right outside of mainland China. But China doesn't have access to them, and they can't build their own. They don't have the no one else has the technology to build the cutting-edge GPUs than TSMC in Taiwan, which is a really, problematic geopolitical situation.
To say the least.
This is the reason why there's so much worry about potential conflict in South China Sea. It remains to be seen how effective this U.S. policy in limiting access to cutting AI technology to other countries is.
There's a question as well here related to open source. So our interesting debate in the open source earlier. To clarify, how can criminals get access to AI when it's open source? How do they get access to the back end where the resources are?
Right. Well, for example, if you go to GitHub, you can download Llama from Meta. The source code of the system is there, the weightings are there, the data source is there, and the safety and security restrictions are in the code. But you can remove them, you can change them, you can do whatever you want. So open source is open source. You can modify the systems as you want. If you want to do the same thing with image generators, Midjourney is closed source, DALL-E is closed source, but Stable Diffusion is open source. You go to GitHub, you download Stable Diffusion, it won't do porn, you remove the restriction and do what the hell you want. That's how it works.
There is one thing to consider is that, of course, you can use other techniques to overcome even some restrictions of the online system, like this concept of jailbreaking allows you to bypass at least some of these restrictions. And there is a vast community underground that shares prompts and tricks and ways to jailbreak this. Sure. So even having a system that is not fully downloadable is not a recipe for full security.
It's true.
All right.
Agreed.
How about our audience here in the studio? Do you have any questions before there's still quite a few questions online. None from here. So there's a question for you, Mikko. I loved Mikko's If It's Smart, It's Vulnerable book. Do you intend to write a new book?
Oh, absolutely. My publishers
regarding AI.
keep bugging me about the next book, and they want an AI book. And I've told my publishers that absolutely I will write the next book when the next pandemic hits, because then I have time.
All right.
So waiting for the next pandemic.
Maybe that's not a bit too soon, right?
Maybe we don't hope that that's too soon after superintelligence come in. All right. We have 1 minute left on the clock. There's one final question on Luminen. Can you answer in 2 sentences, Paolo?
I'll do my best.
can it answer questions related to broad context detections in the future?
It already can.
The future is now. But Paolo and Mikko, thank you for joining me here today. And thank you as well for our online audience and our studio audience. It has been an interesting, fascinating conversation about today, where the future is now, as well as the future where we are still aiming towards superintelligence. It's a journey that we all must take. So take a look at the different use cases that you have, utilize AI in the daily work that you do, so that we actually take this journey together and improve this together. Thank you for your time and attention, and enjoy the rest of your day.